With the final results of the Iowa caucus sitting around 97%, supporters of Senator Bernie Sanders have started a hashtag called Bernie Won Iowa in order to counter what the mainstream narrative is of a Buttigieg victory. To be sure, Buttigieg did not win. In fact, Bernie Sanders now has over 6,000 votes. That is the popular vote, and that is, of course, um, bigger than than obviously more of a lead than Buttigieg. And so what it really comes down to is the delegate count. So now the delegate equivalents do show, or at last that I've looked, did show Buttigieg had barely by like 3 delegates, or about 1/10 of a percentage point. Now, unfortunately, at the end of the day, the SDEs do count more than the popular vote, which is kind of ironic, as Pete Buttigieg had said, I would rather the votes count than things like super delegates or SDEs. So it's an insane system. Now, I don't think Buttigieg is going to hold that lead. There are satellite caucuses that are going to be factored in, and those, of course, went heavily to Bernie Sanders. And so, look, if somehow they still claim that Buttigieg won, that's not going to be a good start to the primary. I mean, uh, and if they claim that he won and he still actually lost, that's also a bad start, right? So the problem here, though, is his 3-day premature victory celebration, and that's one of the big problems here. Now, mainstream media has fortunately begun to notice this, right? Now, Politico reported that Buttigieg may not have won the Iowa caucus, but he is, quote, crushing the spin game. That's important, right? Because out of everybody, the only person to capitalize on all of these problems, right, was Pete Buttigieg, Mayor Pete. That's kind of strange. It's a very strange coincidence, right? Now, getting a lot of positive headlines in mainstream media and being able to give speeches where he talks of his victory in Iowa as the results basically trickled out very, very slowly and what seemed to be very intentionally. They gave Pete a pretty big advantage. And so Sanders supporters, they noticed this, and we did what we do. We call it out. Now, by Thursday morning, reporters for the New York Times, which the night previously had reported that or predicted that Sanders only had a 1% chance of winning Iowa, issued apologies for their premature assessment and issued new reporting that showed that there were, quote, many errors in what the Democratic Party has released, the Iowa Democratic Party specifically. Now, according to the analysis by the Times, more than 100 precincts reported results that were internally inconsistent. For example, you had Black Hawk County that was showing inconsistent numbers. They were missing data or putting out data that was not possible, such as delegates being switched from Bernie Sanders to Tom Steyer and Deval Patrick in the second round when you're supposed to have delegates locked in. If your candidate, of course, is above viability, which is 15%, to which Tom Steyer and Deval Patrick were not at all viable at that point. Uh, Joe Biden was barely viable at 15.4%. Now, in some cases, they said the vote tallies do not add up. In others, precincts are shown allotting the wrong number of delegates to certain candidates, as I had mentioned. And in at least a few cases, they said the Iowa Democratic Party's reported results do not match those reported by the precincts. So you have precinct chairs reaching out and saying, "Oh, whoa, 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 those are the wrong numbers. We have the numbers here." Because there were a lot of people, a lot of Bernie people that were running these Iowa caucuses that made sure to document their own results and made sure to, take pictures of the counts and everything like that to back themselves up just in case the DNC pulled any kind of trickery, right? And so they were caught. And so, of course, if this wasn't intentional, if it was just, and I'm not saying there's a giant conspiracy here, but that's a lot of coincidences, certainly. And all of it served to rob Bernie Sanders of momentum that he had rightly earned. Now, Crystal Ball, went on CNN and she explains the impact and the effect that all of this, call it incompetence, call it trickery, call it a mix of both, what it is, unfair.
Well, I want you to think about this from the perspective of Sanders supporters who do not have a lot of faith in this process or the Democratic Party. To start with, all of this enabled Pete to basically claim a fake victory for days, enabled by the Iowa Democratic Party, the maker of this app, and the media that ran with headlines that were, Pete's in the lead. And the people who are real victims here are who is putting Sanders over the top right now or close to the top right now. It's the immigrant workers and the Latino working class people that campaign painstakingly organized, and their voices were erased from this for days, which in my mind is downright criminal. So Pete is not a victim here. Pete got 3 days of saying he was the winner. There's a new tracking poll out that has him up 9 points in New Hampshire. So all of this completely goes to show you that Sanders supporters are going to be absolutely mistrustful of this process, and rightfully so. Why were these votes released in this way? Why were there, even after they came out, so many errors? How can anyone even have confidence that the numbers are right at this point? It's absolutely outrageous.
She is absolutely right on this. Her analysis is spot on. Look, we are already distrustful of the process. Stuff like that makes it worse. So all of you guys that are, like saying, oh, come on, we definitely cheated. I don't blame you at all for that. I mean, I've got my own suspicions, and I've shared them with you guys on the show. And look, here's the other thing, right? So when we voiced this over the last few days, as we have, talking about these inconsistencies and these reported errors and things not matching up, the number one response we got from mainly Pete Buttigieg supporters, but many of the establishment outlets, is, oh, we're just being conspiracy theorists. Not everything's rigged just because your guy didn't win. Come on, you're a conspiracy theorist. No. I'm sorry that we actually care about the democratic process, that we actually care to get accurate voting numbers. I mean, that's what this is about. This is about not about who wins, because if Bernie Sanders, and look, Bernie Sanders is likely going to win this anyway, and he's already declared victory. He's won the popular vote. So all you people who actually care about, oh, no, popular vote, right? Like all those are, Hillary won the popular vote. What are you talking about? She should be the president. Well, Bernie Sanders won the popular vote here in Iowa, there in Iowa. So, I mean, shouldn't you be making that same argument? I mean, I know of a couple people who are now, but I mean, where are you, right? Where's the rest of you? So look, all we care about is getting the correct vote counts to show who actually won. And whatever candidate did win, which is Bernie Sanders at this point, but even if it was in question before, to get that candidate the bump from Iowa that they deserve. Again, it's not about the delegates so much in Iowa. Yes, you need every delegate you can, or you want every delegate that you can, but really, this is about the media narrative going further and going forward and getting that momentum. And Pete Buttigieg unfairly stole that when he did that. If Pete Buttigieg is guilty of anything, it's capitalizing wrongly on something that he didn't earn. And that, of course, further, I think, hopefully will serve to turn people off Pete Buttigieg. Hey guys, hopefully you enjoyed that free video. Now I'm going to have to ask you a favor. Between the demonetization and the YouTube algorithm messing around with view counts, etc., we're having a hard time adjusting to the new YouTube reality, which is where you guys come in. See, we have a Patreon, patreon.com/TYTNation, set up to help us rely on you guys, the viewers, instead of big corporate ads. Look, you know the show. You know I'm not in favor of big corporations anyway. So help us transition away from relying on the ad model to pay the bills and sign up to be a patron, patreon.com/TYTNation. That goes a long way to help us keep the lights on. And you guys will know that you're supporting independent progressive media.